Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're completely dropping the nostalgia and diving headfirst into the darkest, absolutely most terrifying fan-made alternate timelines of a beloved animated classic. I mean, we all know the heartwarming tale of cowboy dolls and spacemen, right? But what happens when the fans take that wholesome lore and just twist it into absolute horror?
Think back for a second to the toys you broke, lost, or just threw away. What if they actually remembered how you treated them? It's a pretty chilling question, isn't it? And it sets the absolute perfect mood for our campfire ghost story today, because we're exploring three distinct fan theories that completely reimagine the rules of this universe.
So here's our anthology of terror for today. We'll start with the dark side of toys, then look at Sid's toy torture nightmare, move on to Andy's vengeful Sheriff Woody, dive into Mindy's psychological babyface horror, and wrap up with innocent toys or watching monsters.
Section 1. The dark side of toys. Re-examining childhood innocence through twisted alternate timelines.
We're starting our journey by seeing how fan theories completely flip the wholesome idea of living toys into an absolute nightmare. Instead of loyal companions, these toys are captors and relentless punishers. We're going to be escalating from literal physical torture all the way up to supernatural vengeance, and finally, a completely devastating psychological break. So let's kick things off with a character we all thought we knew.
Section 2. Sid's Toy Torture Nightmare. The untold perspective of the neighborhood's bad boy.
Okay, so what's really fascinating about this first theory is how it totally reframes the narrative, forcing us to empathize with the original villain, the infamous skull shirt-wearing bad boy Sid. According to this alternate lore, Sid wasn't evil at all. He was just a super lonely, misunderstood kid living in poverty. You know his famous choppy haircut? Yeah, his parents just couldn't afford a barber. And those quote-unquote mutant toy creations? He actually wanted to be a doctor, so he was practicing surgeries. His mom even assured him that toys don't feel pain. He was literally completely unaware that his innocent little medical experiments were actually horrific physical torture to living beings. But the toys definitely didn't see it that way.
And that brings us to the absolute nightmare timeline of the toy attack. Imagine this. Sid wakes up at 11 p.m. to Ducky and Legs using a plastic fishing rod to physically pry his eyelids open. Then, the horrifying babyface toy uses a mirror to burn Sid's eyes. I mean, as Sid is screaming in sheer agony, toy soldiers are literally marching down his throat to choke him from the inside. It's just a blind, frantic panic. The only reason he survives this is that his loyal dog Scud jumps on the bed, breaks it, and gives Sid a chance to cough up the soldiers, run blindly out of his room, and basically throw himself down the stairs, dislocating his arm in the process.
So as Sid lies there at the bottom of the stairs, completely paralyzed by fear, Babyface approaches him and says, "We will kill your sister. We will kill your family. We will kill your dog. Play with us." Let that chilling threat really sink in for a second. This wasn't just revenge. This was a vow of compliance. It forced Sid into a life of absolute terror, where he had to pretend to happily play with his captors every single day just to keep his family alive.
And obviously, the psychological damage here is permanent. His childhood dreams of becoming a doctor completely vanished. Today, he works as a garbage collector, and every single time he throws away trash, he swears the discarded toys in the dumpster are just looking back at him.
Section 3. Andy's vengeful Sheriff Woody, a domestic horror of a possessed protector.
All right, let's move to our next story and see how this builds. We're shifting from the physical toy torture of Sid's timeline into a deeply disturbing supernatural domestic horror centered around Andy and his favorite toy, Woody. This theory sets a really grim stage. Just the mundane sadness of a broken home. Andy's biological dad has passed away, and his mom has married Frank, who is defined here as an abusive, alcoholic stepfather who physically terrorizes them. Seeking some kind of comfort in all this, Andy finds an old cowboy doll in a box, a doll that supposedly belonged to his late dad.
Now, we all know the movie version of Woody, right? Loyal, wholesome, the ultimate voice of reason. But the conspiracy Woody in this fan theory is something else entirely. He is a deceased father's possessed avatar, capable of growing into a literal human-sized, murderous monster just to protect his son.
The horror in this one is incredibly visceral. One night, a drunk Frank is violently threatening Andy and his mom with a belt, and he stomps right on the Woody doll. Suddenly, Frank grabs his chest. His body starts swelling up with these massive water balloon-like blisters until, Horrifyingly, he literally pops like a balloon, leaving nothing but empty skin and clothes on the floor. And from that pile of skin, a human-sized Woody slowly emerges. He picks up Frank's belt and begins relentlessly chasing Andy's hysterical mother all through the house.
As Woody finally corners the mother, he delivers his famous catchphrase, "Being there for a child is the most noble thing a toy can do." I mean, wow. It takes on such a horrific, supernatural new meaning here, especially when it's being spoken by a human-sized cowboy doll about to exact some deadly vengeance.
So, the crucial point of this theory is the dark twist that comes next. Cornered and terrified, the mother confesses the truth. She actually slowly poisoned Andy's biological father to death for his money. Hearing this, the giant Woody doll just gives her a tight hug. He squeezes her until her face smashes, but instead of blood, she explodes into this massive cloud of puffy cotton balls and string. And the ending? Andy is left living happily in the house with his human-sized toy parents Woody and Bo Peep, completely and permanently detached from reality.
Section 4. Mindy's Psychological Babyface Horror, the tragic reality of a toy-induced psychotic break. For our final theory, we're stepping away from the supernatural entirely and grounding ourselves in a terrifying psychological reality. Let's look at the setup for this total nightmare. We have a 5-year-old girl named Chrissy who is obsessed with those mutant toys. Her dad, Daniel, is an engineer, and he actually builds her a real-life moving babyface toy, you know, the one with the broken doll head on the metallic spider legs. Chrissy absolutely loves it, but her mother, Mindy, is deeply disturbed and terrified by this creepy thing just crawling around her house. Driven totally to the edge, Mindy waits until nightfall to sneak into Chrissy's room and finally throw the toy in the garbage.
But of course, things go horribly wrong. Chrissy wakes up, catches her mom, and eerily says the toy heard her heart. Suddenly, the baby-faced toy just leaps right at Mindy. She kicks it with all her strength, shattering it against the wall. But from those shattered pieces, thousands of tiny baby faces emerge. They swarm Mindy, piercing her skin like little needles and drinking her blood like baby vampires. Mindy is literally drowning in them, and as she looks up, she hallucinates that her daughter Chrissy has actually transformed into the giant babyface monster. Desperate, terrified, Mindy grabs the bulbous head and brutally smashes it against the wall, screaming for it to die.
But here is the truly devastating reality of this story. The toys never attacked. The tiny baby vampires, they weren't real. Mindy's husband comes running into the room, snapping her out of her psychotic break. Mindy looks down at her own blood-soaked hands and realizes the horrific truth. She wasn't smashing a toy. There was no monster at all. In her terrified delusion, she had beaten her own daughter to death. The true horror wasn't the toy. It was a mother's tragic psychological break. Section 5. Innocent toys or watching monsters. The lingering dread of our childhood playthings.
So, what should you really take away from this incredibly dark dive into the fan lore? Well, we've explored a true triptych of terror today. We had Sid, the misunderstood victim, enduring physical torture. Andy, relying on a possessed protector, bringing supernatural gore. And finally, Mindy, representing an absolutely devastating psychological break. These fan theories masterfully corrupt every single angle of childhood nostalgia. They prove that the most innocent concepts can so easily become the most terrifying when you just view them through a slightly different lens. Connecting directly back to Sid's lifelong nightmare as a garbage collector, the next time you throw away a toy, are you absolutely sure it isn't looking back at you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.